Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jody Harrison Bauer, and this is the show that educates, empowers, entertains, and inspires you to live your most fearlessly authentic life. I believe it's never too late to embrace who you truly are, break through limitations, and live bold and strong. This show is your place for real conversations about health, fitness, mindset, and the courage it takes to live unapologetically. Each week, we bring you inspiring guests and actionable advice to help you take charge of your life. So let's get on with the show. I am incredibly excited to bring to you this very special guest, a woman that I actually just met last weekend, and we were just super drawn to each other. It might have been no cold plunging, lots of sauna, but overall, we agreed on many things. Most importantly, women being very proactive about their health and being educated and empowered. And that is exactly what my guest is going to talk about today. And I love her passion for what she does and how she is helping women take control of their health and being proactive and unapologetic about it and knowing what she needs and not what somebody else is telling her she needs. Dr. Jaime Schehr is a licensed naturopathic physician, registered dietitian, and certified dietitian nutritionist with over 20 years in integrative and functional medicine. She founded Schehr Nutrition, where she consults for individual clients and companies. Dr. Schehr is the assistant director of the Integrative Family Medicine Fellowship at the Institute for Family Health, affiliated with Mount Sinai, and previously founded its dietetics program. Her experience includes teaching roles, notably as a faculty contributor at the University of Arizona's Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine and co-founding XFit Lab, a metabolic fitness testing lab. Dr. Schehr has consulted for clients like Peloton and SoulCycle, has lectured at Columbia University, Mount Sinai, and SUNY Hunter College on topics integrating nutrition and naturopathy. Known for her research and expertise, she is a frequent speaker at health conferences and has contributed to advancements in thyroid and diabetics care. Welcome to the show, Jaime.
Very excited to be here today.
I am so excited to have you here too. And, we met each other last weekend. I fell in love with you immediately. We bonded over so many things. And I love your attitude about health and wellness and being a naturopath, a registered dietitian, everything that you have in your background. What made you get into this field? What was your drive? What drew you to it?
So, thank you for having me. And I too fell in love with your story last weekend and then meeting you and actually just having a chance to talk organically with you out by the pool was like the moment where I was like, oh, we're so connected in so many ways. So thank you to you for that. But to jump into a little bit about sort of why I was there and what I do. So I started my career in nutrition from a very early age. I've been an athlete my whole life, so I thought I would do sports nutrition. That seemed like a lot of fun. I could still work with athletes. It ended up not being a lot of fun. It was very political. It wasn't what I thought. But nonetheless, I had gotten a bachelor's and then I went out to do my master's in sports nutrition. I'm a New York girl, born and raised, moved out to Nebraska. I was in over my head with the farm boys and the football team. I was just like,
I didn't know you lived in Nebraska. You went to school out in Nebraska?
yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I
Wow.
packed all my stuff. I went to school in Massachusetts and born and raised in New York, and I moved out to Nebraska. And I was this like, you know, I don't know, 20-year-old, and I was the dietitian for the University of Nebraska football team. And I was just like, this is amazing. And then, it was really tough. It's a tough environment out there. Looking back, I'm like, it's a lot of grit, and I'm glad I did it. It also really helped me to get focused very quickly on what I wanted. And I was looking for like nutrition and health. I wanted to like really help people and change lives. I don't know why. I mean, I guess just from young, I've sort of, that's the role in the family, right? We all play a role. And it was very, when I say political, and I don't even know how we started this call off like this, but it was very like sports, but about the game and about the numbers and about the winning, which is extremely important. But
Right.
I
Right.
wanted to teach people about like broccoli
I get it. And all they cared about was how can you make our athletes better? We don't care about what you're talking about. Make them better so they can win. Because if they're not winning, then we can't keep recruiting people. And Nebraska's a really big school. I mean, in football world, right?
It was a huge opportunity. And
You,
I learned so much. I made lifelong friends and it absolutely helped my career, but it also helped me to just live in the reality of exactly that, right? Like it is important to know why broccoli is good for you and how you should eat fiber, but also it's not the priority of a 20-year-old football player who's about to sign a contract with the NFL who just needs to win games.
right. So
I needed that reality check.
right. So that must have been really frustrating because you go out there, you're in your 20s, you're like, I'm gonna teach the world. I'm gonna teach these football players how to eat well.
Yes.
Meantime, nobody gave a shit.
No, they don't. And they cared about what they needed to care about, right? But
Right.
I thought I sort of had my own agenda. And it was really a life lesson that I am, in retrospect, incredibly grateful for because then after Nebraska, I came back to New York and I started working in a hospital in New York City as a registered dietitian. And I literally was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, right? Like 1,200 milligram sodium diets to somebody in the hospital, and I'm giving them Diet Coke and Jello felt like the most inauthentic version of wellness. And so I was working at my uncle's law firm as a paralegal or I don't even know, secretary. I was working, going to school, working in the hospital, and I just sort of had this moment of like, deep down, I know I love wellness. I know I love health, and I thought I loved nutrition, and I just cannot seem to find my feet. And this is 20 years ago. So it was before IIN, it was before holistic nutrition, it was before all of these things that people have access to today. So I had lunch with a girl. She was in my program. She was a Rockette. She looked amazing. And I said to her, "What are you doing? You look fantastic." And she's like, "Oh, I saw a naturopath and they treated my skin and I don't have acne anymore. And none of my dermatologists were able to help me." And I was like, hold on a second. And literally mid-sentence, I was like, "You saw a what?" And she's like,
Mm.
"A naturopath." I'm like, what the heck is a naturopath? Like, I don't even heard
This
about
was 20 years ago, right?
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she was like, "Oh, it's this type of doctorate and they do integrative stuff and they use food as medicine." And like in that moment, Jody, I had this like, that's what I've wanted to do my entire life. I was 20 something years old, but like my entire thought process around, education and degrees was like that. But I didn't know that this existed.
Oh,
So I said, okay, went home that day. What is a naturopath? And then it popped up and it was like, there was, I don't know, maybe four at the time accredited medical schools where you could learn this. And then there's like a lot of like online degree kind of certifications, which really there aren't many today because thankfully the industry has gotten really strict about this. But I was like, I don't care about any of the political sort of like accredited or not. I care that I learn these things because I now have
right.
the degrees. I have the license to practice, but I don't have what I need to do, right? So, long story short,
I love
I I applied to the school. My parents were like, "This is medical school. Like, this is like a whole commitment. You just finished 6 years of schooling and school loans." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I don't." And my personality has never been like, I'm just not a settler. It never has been. So I was
the same way.
like, if it doesn't feel right, I can't stay there. I viscerally can't. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't practice this knowing that there's stuff out there. So I enrolled, I got accepted, I went to medical school, I met my husband there. And I spent 5 years going there, getting the degree. Meanwhile, I was still working on the weekends as a dietitian at what was Beth Israel, which is now Mount Sinai. And I was in the elevator, and one of the heads of the department walks into the elevator and he sees me carrying a book, and the book is on hydrotherapy. Again, 20 years ago, before saunas and cold and ice baths were cool. And I have this book called Contrast Hydrotherapy. And he says to me, "Why? I'm just out of curiosity, like, what got you to read that book?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in school to be a naturopath." And he's like, "But you work here?" I said, "Yeah, I'm your registered dietitian on the weekends." And I think one like evening, which is why I like ran into him. And he was like, well, you make sure that when you get that naturopathic degree, you find me. I didn't know anything about him. I was like, okay. And sure enough, I finished the degree and I knew who he was and I found him and I said, I am now a doctor of naturopathic medicine. And I still worked there part-time. And long story short, 18 years later, I am still there. I am now the assistant director of integrative medicine. And I run the integrative medicine fellowship because what was happening was a lot of the medical doctors were like, we don't know this stuff that our patients are coming in asking for.
Right.
And I had the education and the degrees to be employed clinically in the hospital and still had the education on the things like the integrative stuff. So I don't believe in luck. I believe in opportunity meets readiness. I think I was really ready to learn what I needed to, and I had the opportunity. So fast forward now, health and wellness and integrative medicine and functional medicine, they're like all the rage. And I just happened to sort of find a path 20 years ago that would be serve me very well now. And so I stayed there. I still run the integrative medicine out of Sinai. I run a private practice as well simultaneously. And I spend my days getting to do what I love.
I love your story. Thank you for being so honest about it. So many people don't want to admit that, hey, and you hear this a lot with doctors in particular, they get into a field and then they end up resenting it, hating it. It's a lot of work. Everybody knows that the medical field isn't the way it used to be. A lot of doctors are getting out of traditional medicine, which is what I want to talk to you about also. And they stay there because they think they should. So I give you a lot of credit for saying, this doesn't feel authentic to me. And I understand that too. I mean, I think that's why we bonded so quickly.
Connected.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. And because if we don't feel authentically good in our core, in our power, then we can't do the best job to help other people. And although we do want to get paid for our work, that's not the driving force. I'm going to bet that you did not get into this field to make more money. Sure, it probably happened, but it's not what drove you.
Yeah. So it's exactly that. And I laugh a little bit because people would actually say to me, why would you do that? Why would you spend, $250,000 to get a degree that earns no money? Why wouldn't you just go to real medical school and become an MD? Why wouldn't you? And I was always like, if I wanted to do that, I absolutely would, right? But the whole reason I kept moving, through these education, these degrees it was nothing to do with money and it wasn't to do with status. It was like I knew there was something that I loved, and I knew that if I found a passion to do what I loved in work, that I could be happy, right? I don't come from money. I don't come from a family that had money. I was an athlete. I come from a very, very, like, both of my parents were teachers. My mother was an art teacher. My father was a social studies teacher. And so there was just a work ethic of like, you work hard and you find something you love. And then as an athlete, I was a gymnast my whole life. You would go into the gym, you would work hard, and you loved doing it. And so that sort of permeated so much of me young that the focus for me was really like, I want to work hard, but I want to work hard doing something I love. Like if I could replicate my gymnastics career from young to old, I would. And that's essentially what I did. It just, I was smart enough to know that I wasn't going to be an athlete forever. It was never about the money. And, to everyone listening, Jody and I met at Win Where It Matters, which is a lot around money, right? And in my later years, I'm learning the things that I didn't know, right? I'm really successful and very smart in medicine and very, clear around my passion and my goals. But like, I'm also learning now, wow, there's a whole world of like financial growth that I'm now only learning at 44. And that's
Right,
pretty.
which by the way, it's still very young. So you're talking to a basically 64-year-old. So I look at you and I say, I wish I knew then what I know now. I wish I knew now what I wish I knew then what I know now. So you're way ahead of the game because you're doing something that you love and you're figuring out the rest of it. I think it's so important. And I always told my daughters, they had a very, very nice life. They still have a very, very nice life. I didn't come from money either. So it was always have your own money. Um, the same mentality that you have. My daughters didn't grow up the same way, but so they had the pleasure to say, I'm going to do what I love to do, and
Mhm.
hopefully I'll make the money as well. Because you know as well as I do that the money does come. It's
Mhm.
not, I don't, there are people out there who that is their driving force.
Sure.
For me, for you, it wasn't, but it will be. And as long as we're doing what we love and helping others, I think that's where it all starts.
I say every day of my life, I say this to my husband, and we talk about this a lot, and I say it to my children, like, I love what I do. I
You,
love what I do. There is not a day that I wake up where I think I wish I did something different. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't days where I'm like, I don't feel like working today. There haven't been roles, jobs, or, opportunities that I've taken where I'm like, oh, this isn't serving me so well. I'm not going to do this anymore next time. I'm not sitting here like, oh, it's all like rainbows and sparkles. It's been a challenge. I mean, I'm a doctor in an industry where people like to say, oh, that's not legitimate. So there's always challenges along the way, but there is not a day that I wake up that I'm not like, I love what I do. And the day I wake up and I don't love doing it, no, you know this just because you're the same personality. Like the day I wake up and I'm like, I don't love this anymore, that's the day I leave.
let me ask you a question about your gymnastics
Mhm.
life and experience. So, when did you start gymnastics? When did it end? Did you want to go to the Olympics? Were you at that level? And how do you feel that being a gymnast has helped you as a doctor?
I actually don't think anyone has ever asked me that question. In all the podcasts and lecturing I've done, I don't think anyone's ever asked how that has helped me here, which is really cool to think about. So that was never Olympic level. I fell into gymnastics young. I don't know if I was 2 or 3 or 5, or I have siblings and some of them were taking gymnastics lessons. There were some challenges in my home growing up. I was one of 5 kids, and one of my siblings was just not mentally well. And so there was an escape for me. I found the gym to be a place where like I could go and just really shine and be me. And so for, years and years of therapy and all the psychology, I now know why the gym was the place I loved to be the most, but what a blessing. And so I fell in love with gymnastics young. I was a gymnast my entire life. I was a gymnast all the way through till college. In college, I actually converted over to be a high diver. So I was a springboard high diver in college.
Oh,
Uh,
Jamie, my goodness.
and really, it was being an athlete is no different than how I feel today in being, in running a business. Like I just love the building. I love the discipline. I love, being part of a team. So it helped my life. It helped save my life, if you will. It kept me in a gym and in a space where like all of my struggles were positive. I turned struggles into positive struggles in the gym. But how it helped me as a doctor today, I would imagine is an answer that I could give a few different scenarios to. Like there's many levels. I will say gymnasts go through a lot of body dysmorphia. Gymnasts go through a lot of eating disorders. Gymnasts have a tremendous stress on appearance. And that I am very fortunate to have escaped. I've never had an eating disorder. I've never had body dysmorphia, but I was surrounded by it. And it actually drove me to want to be able to practice nutrition in a very healthy way. So,
Interesting.
full circle, I actually don't work with women who have eating disorders or severe eating disorders. I do work with women who have body dysmorphia, and I think it's hard to escape being a woman without some version of that at some point in our lives. But, I really sort of saw what that mindset could do to somebody and how detrimental it was. And I don't know why I was able to hold on to the opposite of that, right? But when you don't fall into that, and when you have a strong foundation of what is healthy, how far that can take you. And so that drove me a lot into the wellness circles that I'm in, wanting to really push health. And so that I would say is one area. And then I just say the discipline of an athlete, the discipline of a gymnast is the same discipline necessary to go through medical school and to weather the storm.
And to continue every single day to practice what you're doing. You work out constantly, you live, you walk the walk. You don't tell somebody to do something you wouldn't do.
Never.
And escape that, the issue with the eating issues, body dysmorphia, and like you said, everybody kind of goes through that a little bit. And of course, I'm a postmenopausal woman. There are a lot of women who go through menopause and then they stop eating and they don't, and they're exercising like crazy and they're losing muscle and they don't understand why they feel like shit and they have no energy. But speaking specifically about discipline, I think that when you come from a background like yours, or somebody who has to work diligently on becoming better at their job, better at their work, whatever they're doing, their skill set. And for me, it reminded me when I heard you talking about this, it reminded me of when I started competing in fitness shows at 47, that I wanted to start competing.
Mhm.
And my ex-husband wouldn't let me. I wanted to do it at 35. And I had a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. And he's like, not when you're my wife. So I'm like, okay, asshole, I'm gonna divorce you and
Yeah,
I'm gonna compete in
planted
shows.
that
That's how,
seed.
yeah, I mean, that's how I divorced him. There were a lot of other reasons, but I didn't realize, we don't realize a lot of things until we're here, that it was the discipline of being a gymnast. It was the discipline of being a diver. It was the discipline for me of getting to the gym every single day to compete. Because as I mentioned when we were talking this weekend, I like to win. I don't like
Yes.
to just do things for fun. That's part of my problem is I forget how to have fun because I'm so focused on the goal. Are you like that also?
Oh my gosh, my daughters always say, Mom, not everything is a competition. And I'm always like,
Oh,
oh.
really? You're like, yes, it is, and we're winning.
Like, who's gonna get to the mailbox fastest? Like, but yeah, I mean, I'm a natural competitor, mostly with myself, but I think when you're competitive with yourself, you're just competitive in as like in nature. So yeah, I do. That is a part of my cloth.
I love that. And it explains like why you're so good at what you do. So let's talk about traditional medicine and
Mhm.
naturopathic medicine and
Yeah.
concierge medicine. Talk to us about how everything is changing and how you're evolving and how stepping into away from traditional medicine and how that feels, and and how you're doing it.
Yeah. This is a really important question, and I hope that everyone listening can take this and share it with other people who find the struggle in the medicine space, because right now it's a struggle. So, first of all, I start all these conversations off with it's not your doctor's fault that they don't know everything you want them to know. Your doctor, who's conventionally trained, went to medical school, learned everything that medical school has to teach them, from how to spot strep throat to how to make sure you're not having a descending aortic aneurysm to figuring out what specialist you need to go to rule big, bad, and ugly out. Doctors today are predominantly educated in identifying and treating illness. They have not been educated on what is wellness. And we walk in there and we're like, well, how come you don't know about these hormones or this diet? Or we expect that they should know it, but they are human and they learned what they learned, right? Like, I'm not going to walk into my financial advisor's office and be like, well, how come you don't know how to grow trees on my yard? That's someone I have to ask my landscaper that, right? And so I think there is a component where, because medical school has not adapted to wellness, doctors are traditionally educated in identifying, treating, and managing illness. And now social media and the way the world has brought wellness to the forefront of all of our brains, rightfully so. But we then expect that of our provider. And so I often say it is not your provider's fault that they don't know it, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't speak to you about it, right? So if you have a doctor and you walk in and you're like, well, I really want to have my hormones tested. And the doctor's like, I'm not doing that. That's unnecessary. Okay, that's not your provider, right? Because they're not even willing to have that conversation. But the provider who says, hey, I know that's like important and I don't really know how to do that. That's not really what I do. I don't know a lot about it. I don't know how I'd help you. That's your doctor, because they're willing to have that conversation and say, hey, that's not my wheelhouse. You got to find someone else. Or that's not my wheelhouse, but let's see if we can figure it out together. Right. So, first, whoever's listening, like, understand that before we fault, we need to understand where someone's coming from. Otherwise, we're just pointing a finger. We're not getting anywhere with that, right? The whole goal of the relationship with your provider is one that is going to benefit you, not one that is going to be contentious. And so I say that because traditional medicine is like I'm not going to my functional medicine or naturopath if I think that I'm having an emergency crisis, right? Like if I think that there's something, I'm going to go to an ER. And so understand who you're working with, right? I see this a lot with pediatrics. Mothers will be like, well, that my doctor didn't tell me. And I'm like, but it might be because they didn't learn it that way. So that's one thing. And then I said this in the talk where you and I met, which I think is an incredibly important kind of statement that everybody should maybe hold space for, even though it's not necessarily the right thing. It's how it is, which is illness is an expense and wellness is an investment. Illness is an expense means your health insurance is an expense that you pay to cover your illness, right? I carry a heavy health insurance bill because I want to make sure that my family is covered. God forbid one of us is in an accident or needs something that's related to illness. But I don't then expect that the wellness intentions that I need to afford are going to be part of my insurance because that's not the way insurance is. Could I hope that it changes down the road? You and me both, right? But right now, if we can reframe and think about wellness and investing in our wellness providers or our programs for preventative future wellness versus expecting them to be covered, right? And I say this because a lot of people are like, well, my doctor won't write my hormones and there's sort of this like, I'm stuck. They won't give me what I want. And I'm like, well, we have to then invest in ourselves. So
it's upsetting because you do have that situation. You're
Mhm.
paying to see your PCP who can't answer your questions. Hopefully, you do have somebody who says, I can't answer that question, but let's see if we can find somebody, or I know somebody that I could refer you to. That's perfect. But understanding that you may have to pay out of pocket for
Mhm.
that. So that's the investment. And so what's happening now is that I've seen women who are menopausal and postmenopausal
Mhm.
who are not getting the support from their PCP,
Oh.
or they think, or I hear them say, my OBGYN. I'm like, don't go to your OBGYN,
If
okay?
they
Um,
heard your babies, they're probably not the person who's going to help you with your menopause.
exactly. Like, don't do that, but go ahead and try. I'm in this group chat, like from Connecticut, where it's a bunch of women talking. It's called, I used to live in Branford, Connecticut. I can't believe I'm saying I used to live in Branford, but anyway, I used to live in Branford. It's called Branford Bitches. And so you go there to get information about anything and everything. You need an electrician, a plumber, everything. So somebody was asking about a hormone doctor. And
Mhm.
all of these women were all saying, well, I spoke to my OBGN, I spoke to my GYN, I spoke to my PCP. Nobody knows, nobody knows. And oh, is that going to cost me money? So when I'm saying you need to see a hormone expert,
Mhm.
well, is insurance covering that? No. And that is, I feel bad, it is a problem, right? Because
Yes.
a lot of people don't have the money to spend on something that they're
Correct.
not sure. And so what do we do about that? How do we solve that problem?
Well, I mean, it's a multifactorial, right? So for one, hormone replacement therapy, hormone doctors, like this is a new, very fast trend. And
Right.
it's new, hormones are not new, but the surge of women who are interested and willing, like the conversations around menopause, they are new because for the past 20, 30 years, we haven't been having them. So to clear it up, like it's not that hormones are new, but us openly having conversations about hormones and using them is relatively new because
Exactly.
for a long time there were some incorrect studies that made us fearful of hormones, and we now know that that's not the case. Now we then have to get our doctors and the education around that up to speed, which is happening pretty rapidly, but we're not there yet, right? I don't believe that in 10 years the conversation around hormone replacement therapy and menopause is going to be nearly as hard as it is right now for women. I think it's going to be a completely different conversation. but we're sort of in that like space where it's just transitioning over and everybody's trying to figure it out. So I have a lot of faith that from the medical side of things, we are approaching hormones differently, but we haven't caught up yet. Like it's taking a little time. And I think that social media helps, right? Because that's, for all its negative, there's a huge positive in its ability to speed up information, and help people access things better. But so it is a problem that it's an expense. It shouldn't be. And it's not always. I mean, if you're really specific and targeted about finding it, and sort of the way you and I were talking about who we are as humans and discipline, like a woman who says, I'm going to find a doctor who takes my insurance and will talk to me about hormones is going to find a doctor who takes their insurance and talks to them about hormones. They just have to be willing to actually weed through all the others that won't, right? So if you're listening and that's you, don't give up. They are out there. There are doctors who take insurance and talk hormones. It's just not as many as the ones who don't. You got to work at it. And it is a disservice to women right now that we don't have these conversations, but I do think it's changing. I really do. I think that more women are like, I'm going to take this into my own hands and I'm going to pay for it. And then that brings in more providers who want to do it, which brings in more people. And I think it's changing.
Can you explain to everyone what hormone replacement therapy is? And for everyone who's been listening to the show for the last 4.5 years, I have discussed it many times, but everybody comes in with a different approach. I mean, it is what it is, but can you break it down as a woman? What is hormone replacement therapy? Why do we need it? When should women start recognizing the fact that maybe they need to see an expert, and who is the expert they should see?
Hormone replacement therapy is the concept that as our hormones decline with age and we hit perimenopause, which is the period of time before menopause, and then transition through menopause, which is the absence of your cycle. So what happens is your hormones start to decline for some women very rapidly, for some women more slowly over a longer period of time. And it comes with a lot of symptoms. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on the symptoms, but anything and everything from fatigue and depression and vaginal dryness and loss of libido and weight gain and body fat, right? Sleep disturbances. So you're all of a sudden doing everything you used to do. You're eating the same, you're training the same, you're sleeping the same, but you feel symptoms in any different capacity. And the idea with hormone replacement therapy is that we use hormones to help decrease the rate at which we lose them, which is one way of thinking about it. So some people will just use hormones to transition through menopause because the symptoms are so severe without the help of the hormones. Other women will think of hormone replacement therapy as, I'm going to take hormones for as long as I want to or as long as I can because I want to maintain my youthfulness, my skin, my sex drive, my energy, my sleep, etc. And so the idea, hormone replacement therapy is replacing hormones in the body that are naturally declining over time. Whether you use it just to transition through the symptoms is one way. Whether you use it for the duration of however long you feel, necessary is another way. Then there's another fork in the road, which is it bioidentical or is it not, right? And the not bioidentical would be just a specific type of pharmaceutical hormone that we give standard levels, and the bioidentical is using the levels and types of hormones, so there's different types of estrogen, to specifically match the ones in the body. But before you even get there, I want to say to everyone listening, hormone replacement therapy, for the most part, is not a need, but it is a right. And what I mean by that
Say
is
that again.
it's not a need, it's a right. It is your right to.
I love that. I love, love, love that. Love that. Beautiful.
So, need a type 1 diabetic needs to have insulin, right? There are needs. Somebody with hypothyroidism needs to have their hormones replaced or they are not going to be able to survive, right? There are needs in medicine. Hormone replacement therapy is a right. You have the right to this medicine, to use this medicine to help you feel your best version of you. But it is not, if you go into your doctor and you sort of stand on the pedestal of need, it's not really a good place to be because it's not necessarily a need. You might need it to help you not feel great, but like, it's not a need. It is your right as a woman to feel good. It is your right as a woman to be able to say, this is the way I want to live my life and this is how I want to be healthy. And, that is how I describe it. So I always say to women, there's a fork in the road. When they're like, I don't know if I need hormones. I'm like, that's not the way we should think about it. We need to think about it as you've hit the fork in the road. You have the choice. You want to explore hormone replacement therapy because you feel bad. You don't feel good. You feel sick. Your life is not as productive as it used to be. Your symptoms are impacting your quality of life, your sleep, your health metrics. Like that is someone who says, I want to do hormones because I don't want hot flashes. I want whatever the case may be. Then there's the other woman who would say, no, I don't want to do hormones. I want to go through menopause and I want to feel as good as I can. And I want to transition to that next phase of life. And I'm not interested in hormones. And that's their right.
Exactly, exactly. But what I'm sure we both hear are women who are postmenopausal who still believe that bioidentical hormone replacement therapy causes breast cancer. And we now know that it doesn't. And that's really what I think is so important that, and you even mentioned this weekend, there are always going to be different reports coming out, debunking this, debunking that one. But that scared the shit out of women. I know it
Yeah.
scared me, which is why I didn't start until I was 60, and I could have started when I was 50. So it's always about doing your homework and finding the right doctor that fits you for what you need and what you want, because you have a right to feel the best you can. And that's really what it comes down to, which is what I love about that statement. And I also want to talk about it depends, right? Because we talked about that over the weekend. And that depends like the underwear stuff when you're incontinent, but um it depends. That can happen too. But depending on and getting into nutrition, which we haven't talked about at all, and I just do want to touch upon it. As somebody is aging, a woman aging, for example, how should she adjust her nutrition? And as you mentioned before, you're doing the same things. You're still working out. You're still eating the same food. I know for myself, and I have a nutrition background, and I've been training women for 35 years, that not every diet is the same for every woman. It has to change based on, I say, based on your activity levels and your goals. You say depends on your activity level goals and probably more things. So I think it's really important for women to understand that if you are a 60-year-old woman, you should not necessarily be listening to the advice of a 27-year-old personal trainer who doesn't have a nutrition background. Like that pisses me off and irks me so much. Find somebody who can help you and has experience with what you're going through.
It's so important for that piece of it right there, right? Like I'm not going to pick up my kids from school in a little while and counsel them on like how to create the best, I don't know, social media video or like, like I don't know it. I'm not in it. It's not there. Like it's so important for us to, be mindful of one, who we receive information from, where we receive the information, why we're even listening or drawn to that particular information. And I always use it depends because I it does. I mean, if I ever write a book, I joke all the time the title's going to be It Depends because should I have this much protein or this much protein? It depends. Should I do hormone therapy or should I not do hormone therapy? Well, it depends, right? And because that is holding space for the beauty of the individual.
Mm.
I cannot, in my heart, treat every single person the same because I don't believe we all operate the same. Our bodies are different. Our economical system, our social, our emotional, our environmental, our familial, and so there has to be a narcissism we all carry around, and I use that in a good way. Of is this right for me? What about me? I can look at these 25-year-olds on Instagram saying, 5-minute abs to get rid of belly fat, and I'm like.
No.
You had babies before,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people are out there to help, but it's also, an area where I've seen this happen, and I might get in trouble for saying this, is I've seen a lot of lactation specialists who've never breastfed.
Wait,
And
what?
yeah, there's a whole like they become lactation consultants. And I respect that they want to help women breastfeed, but I'm also like, well, but it's a world of like, such a challenge until you've done it. And again, like I really respect that they want to help people, but I also think that there's something to be said for, knowing where you are in your life and counseling on that. And so when you ask about nutrition, I'm going to say, I believe in certain types of diets are fundamentally better at helping gain muscle or helping lose fat, right? I believe optimizing your protein and fiber ratios is the foundation, right? You have to eat enough fiber, you have to have enough protein. I could say that across the board for every woman I work with who's age 34 to 54 or 64 or 74. However, if someone shows up in my office and they're morally vegan and they can't possibly eat animals because it's against their moral code and they won't even wear leather, I have no business trying to tell them that they should be increasing their protein through chicken or turkey or fish, right? And I think we lose sight of that. I think we get stuck on this, like, you need to have this, this, and this. And what's lost in that is the human and the person. And I know that my practice has been the most successful because there's nothing more important than holding in the center of the conversation who the person is in front of me.
So true. So true.
So nutrition
That's
needs to change. Protein needs are high. Fat needs have to be moderate. Fiber has to be matching your protein. Exercise has to be there. It's just hard to be super specific because
everybody's different.
yeah.
Not one size fits all. And I think, when I see, and I'm sure it drives you crazy too, but me coming from a fitness background, seeing, like 5-minute abs and, even working out with my daughter sometimes, she's like, can we just work on abs today? I'm like, no, no, stop it. Like, no, like I'm your mother. No, we're not just working on abs today. We're always working on our abs. And she's like, but I want to do this and I want to change your diet, So it depends on what your goals are. It depends on where you are in life. You have to be open to pivoting and changing and being aware of what I did in my 30s is not what I could do in my 50s and 60s. And I think somebody asked me, like, what what does my daily routine look like and how has it changed? Well, when I was competing, I was lifting really heavy and I was eating 150 grams of protein a day. But I don't eat
Mhm.
that much protein anymore because I'm not building anymore. I'm maintaining. I'm in the maintenance part of life. So I think it's very important for women to be aware of what stage of life they're in and what they feel like doing also. And I think,
And,
go ahead.
you just brought up something that's really challenging, which is then what we're asking people to do, and this is hard for all of us, is to do the hard work, to look internally, right? What
Right.
you're talking about is doing the hard things. The thing that drives you crazy is, the 5-minute abs. The thing that drives me crazy are the women on social media selling like cortisol blockers to lose belly fat. Buy my supplement for $100. And then all these women who are like, I want to lose belly fat, so they buy the cortisol blocker for $100. And I'm like, but really, to manage cortisol, you have to do hard work. You have to optimize your sleep schedule. You have to, control your stress levels. You have to manage your caffeine levels. You have to take care of your protein and fiber intake. It is a heck of a lot easier to be like, oh, well, I must need those cortisol blockers because I have belly fat.
Okay. So we're talking about you have to do the hard work. And
Mhm,
that's why everybody tries to complicate things
mhm.
because it's very simple what we're talking about. And we're not sitting here from this, highfalutin area. We've done the work. We
Yeah,
know how hard it is. Jamie's
yeah, we
44.
earned our stripes for sure.
We earned our stripes, so we know. And that's why it's so important to find the right person to work with you, to know what the hard work is, who can hold your hand, who could educate you and empower you to get to the place where you want to be, because the answers are there. The work is simple, but it's hard. And
And
you
it may
just
not
have
be
to
one
do it.
person, right? It might not
Wait,
be one.
oh, no, it takes a village.
Yes. I say this to my daughters all the time. If they say, like, well, why do I have to do X? I'll be like, you know why? Because we can do hard things. And we're going to
Uh,
continuously prove to ourselves that we can do hard things. Because when you do the hard things, the reward is a lot greater, right? You actually get to the answer. And sometimes there's going to be women here being like, well, I eat well and I exercise and I still can't hit that. That's why we need a team, right? I'm not my own doctor. I'm sure that you've turned to people for training. Even though you're a trainer, you've probably said, I need somebody else to do this for me. Like we sometimes can't see for ourselves, even when we're doing all the right things. So I do encourage everybody,
Yes.
who is your team? Who is holding you up? Who's not only encouraging you emotionally, but helping you figure it out, right? That's half the game in sort of figuring out the strategy to your wellness. That is going to give you the answer to, do you need this supplement? Should you eat this food? Do you want to be on hormones? Is sort of tapping into people who can reflect back to you the things we can't do for ourselves.
I love the way you approach all of this. It's so heartfelt, like I about at the beginning of the show. I feel your heart. I felt your heart when I met you this weekend. I wish I had a doctor like you when I was younger and going through menopause. Is there, besides nutrition, would you describe your practice as, who do you see? Who are the patients that you see? And yes, who are the patients that you would see?
So half of my work, 50% of my work is teaching doctors, right? In when I'm in the clinic, I am teaching physicians, teaching residents, teaching doctors on this language. Why is it important to give an antibiotic, to give a probiotic alongside the antibiotic? Why is it important that if we're going to support thyroid with synthroid or levothyroxine, we also have to talk to them about protein levels? Why is it important, right? So it's sort of like really helping boots on the ground, helping the physicians learn the things so that in 10 years from now, our daughters aren't having this conversation, right? But that the paradigm shifts. The other, and so it's teaching doctors and sort of doing a lot of more lecturing, because I think it's important that there's a language to a lot of people around empowering them to look more, to look deeper. My patient care work is, mostly, I would say, predominantly women, but some men, usually 30 to 70 years old. And they usually have some sort of health component that they've been working with on their, the side of their PCP. And they come to me and they say, hey, I need to feel better. I have, bloating, distension, constipation. I've seen GI. I got diagnosed with IBS. That didn't help. Or I was treated for SIBO, but then it came back a little bit while later. They want their gut to feel better, or they come to me and they say, I'm on birth control or I'm on hormones, but like it's not fully doing it. I need to figure out what to do with my sleep, with my exercise, with my supplements, with my medications. A lot of weight management in the sense of like, just help me figure out what is the right proteins and fibers. I see a lot of the best way to describe it is I see people who are healthy in the sense that there's nothing significantly wrong in the moment. Whatever the diagnoses are, they have a treatment plan for that, and or a team. But they are like, I want to feel better. I want to lose weight. I want my skin to be clearer. I want my stomach to not be constipated. I want my brain to not be foggy. And it's like, so I describe it as like, I'm a doctor, but I'm here for wellness. I'm here for the person who's like, I want to feel the absolute best that I can possibly feel. And I didn't get those answers when I went to see my regular doctor. So now I want to do it with you.
I'm so glad that you're there for so many people. I really am. And I'm so glad that I met you. I love what you're doing. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, so the best way, honestly, is social media. If they're listening to this, they'll see my name on the print because the spelling is a little difficult. I always say, if I knew when I started Instagram, I don't know, 15 years ago, like what it would be, I probably wouldn't have made it my first and last name because the spelling isn't so easy. But social media, and then I have a website, which is also my first and last name, just www.jamieshehr.com. And they can find me that way. And, if you go into podcasts, I'm constantly doing podcasts because, before I became a nutritionist, when I was growing up, I thought I was going to be like a health teacher. And I think education has always been, in my heart and at the root of it all. So my goal for this next, 10, 20 years of work is to be able to take the education piece and reach more people.
I love that for you, and I know you will. You're doing it now, and I'm just so grateful that you're on the show. Okay, so my last question for you is, what does it mean for you to live a fearlessly authentic life?
To live fearlessly authentic for me means to not run from discomfort, because that to me is the way that keeps me small. And I can only grow through the things that I know are challenging. So whenever I meet a challenge or a fear or a discomfort, I work very, very hard to make sure that I am not turning from, but going into or leaning into understanding why for me it's hard, right? And that helps me discover more about myself or whatever the situation might be that I'm trying to achieve, whether it's in parenting or in health and wellness. I mean, we're talking a lot about hormones, right? Like I could run from the fact that I'm 44 and need to also look at mine, or I could say, no, I'm going to do this fearlessly. I'm going to show up. Same thing we did with this weekend and money. Like to me, fearlessly authentic doesn't mean things aren't hard, and it doesn't mean they're not scary, but it means that I'm going to stand here in it, in all the discomfort, in all the pain, in all of it, because that's the only way I can grow through it.
Beautiful. Love you, love you, love you.
Yeah, I feel like we could talk for hours. We didn't even talk about like the nitty-gritty of how do people talk to their doctor about hormones or how do
I
they.
know. Well, that's why you have to come back. And the next time I'm in the city or you're down here, we will get together. We are friends forever. I'm never letting you not be my friend. And thank you. Thank you. And I hope to have you on the show again. So
And
thank you
thank
so
you to everyone listening. And please, I say this to everyone, reach out to me. That's what I'm here for. I'm never going to
Please.
answer my phone in the middle of dinner, so you can't bother me. Let me decide. So reach out.
Thank you so, so much. And for everybody listening, thank you for joining us today. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe. And until next time, go live your most fearlessly authentic life. Bye bye, everyone.